Alright, welcome back. Now in this particular video, we're going to consider what is called the frequency distribution. Okay, so these are, as I said earlier on, right from the beginning of the class, these are some of the concepts that you're really going to need as you progress in this course. Okay, so we actually going to get to understand this frequency distribution and then also see some examples of that. Okay, all right, so now when we're talking about the frequency, right, remember that over here we're talking about two terms here, frequency and then the distribution. Okay, so frequency is nothing but how often something happens. Okay, so for instance, if I want to just list some random numbers over here, maybe some 1, right, 1, 5, 6, 1, 12, 5, 5, 6, 6, 6, 7, 0, right? So now, if I want to measure frequency here, right, how often does 1 appears? How often does 1 appears? That's the frequency of 1, okay? If I want to see how often does 5 appears, right, that becomes the frequency of 5, right? That's how frequent 5 appears, how frequent 5 is, how consistent 5 is. Okay, so in this case, 5 appears 3 times, right? 5 appears 3 times. Okay, so that's how frequent 5 is in my data. Okay, now if you want to see maybe the frequency of 6, right? We have 1, 2, 3, 4, right? So that's how frequent 6 is, right? So 6 appears 4 times. That's how frequent 6 is. That's what we refer to it as frequency, how frequent it is. Okay, so for instance, if you want to see how often a customer visits your website or how often a customer visits your shop, that's frequency. That's what you want to measure. How frequent is the customer to your website or to your shop? That's frequency. Okay, so I hope you have an idea about it. If you see the example that we have over here, right? So how frequent is 2, right? So we have 1, 2. So 2 in 2 we have 2 times 2 appears 2 times, right? If we see how frequent 3 is, 3 appears only 1 time. Okay, if we see how frequent say 9 is, you can see that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So 9 actually appears 5 times. So we have 1, 2, 3, 4, and then the last one you cross it like that. Okay, we will see how we do this later on. All right, so this is how frequent these numbers are, right? So if you want to measure the customer, if it is customers, then you want to see how frequent the customer is. Maybe the customer buy an item today, and tomorrow the customer doesn't come. The next day the customer doesn't come. The customer comes after 3 days, right? Normally, that's if that is the pattern of the customer, then the customer comes 3 days after 3 days after 3 days. Then you will see that okay, this is how frequent the customer is to my shop. However, there will be some customers who are consistent, who are very frequent, who always come to the shop. That's how frequent the person is. So if you want to sell something to the customer, you know how, or you want to give a discount, you know which customer to give a discount, right? Some customers are very frequent and you want to give them discount so that they will keep on coming. Okay, that's frequency. All right, so now let's talk about the distribution part, right? Let's talk about the distribution part over here. Now, if we consider the frequency, right, let's take the example that we have over here, right? We say that the frequency is how often the item appears, right? How often the item appears. That's how frequent it is. Okay. Now, if you put this frequency in the form of a table or in the form of a graph, right? In the form of a table or in the form of a graph, that becomes a distribution, frequency distribution. You're distributing it over a table or over a graph. Okay, so in this case, if we take say 139, how often or how frequent is 139? It appears 1, right? So that's why you see 1 over here. Now if you see say 145 comes 1, 2, 2 times, right? That's why you see 2 over here. Okay, then 136 comes 1 time. Okay, so you can see we can see 1 over here. Then if you see 150 comes 1 and then 2, right? So that's why you see 2 over here, right? So 152, 144 also comes 1, 138, right? So 138 we have in 1, 2, and then it's just 2 over here, right? So now you can actually see how often these appear, and we've put them in the form of a tabular form, right? So that becomes frequency distribution. So it could be in the form of a table or a graph. Okay, it could be in the form of a table or a graph. So that becomes the frequency distribution, right? So in this case, now over here, you're seeing that the same data that we have 139, 145, 150, 136, 152, 144, 138, right? It's just the same data that we have over here, right? It's the same data. You can see that we have 139, 145, 150, 145, all these data, right? It's the same thing we put on I mean, in the form of a tabular, and over here we are putting it in a form of a graph, right? We're using histogram over here to do that. Okay, so that becomes frequency distribution, okay, either in the form of a table or in the form of a graph. All right, so I hope by now you know what frequency distribution is. All right, so we're going to proceed to the next slide to see some examples of this. Okay, now one thing that we need to also consider that earlier on what we're doing, right? Earlier on what we're doing is that we have this simple data, right? Let me go back. Yeah, we have this simple data, right? We have very short data over here. This will just 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, just 10 data points, right? But if you have a huge data points like say 50, right, say 100 or 1000, right, it becomes difficult to just list all the 50 like this, right? I mean, in a vertical form like this, or even if you want to list all of them horizontally like that, it's going to be a long list. Okay, you don't want to do that. So what we can do, right, what we can do is let's go to the next slide and see what we have over there, right? So what we can do is to use the concept of interval, right, to put them on an interval scale. All right, that's the key over here, to put them on an interval scale. So if you see what we have here, we have 50 data points, right? We have 50 data points over here. Okay, we have 50 data points over here. So if we want to list this, right, that's going to be, if we want to do it like we did earlier on, so that's going to be a long list like that. Okay, that's going to be a long list like that. We don't actually want to do that. We don't want to do that. So what we can do is that we will find an interval, say this maybe between 0 and 10. What are the data points that are between that? Then we put them there. Or maybe we can use say between 0 and 15, right? Or maybe between 0 and 20, right? So what is the data point that exists between them? Okay, then we group them together. Okay, we put them over here, right? So any data point that falls within 0 and then 20 will be counted, right? And then the frequency of that will be noted down. Okay, instead of maybe listing 0, find how many zeros are there, find how many ones, how many twos, how many threes, all the way to 50, right? It's going to be, I mean, a huge or a very long table. Okay, so the efficient way to do that is to put them in a form of an interval scale, right? So that's what we are doing here. So between 0 and then 20, we will find the data points that fall within that. Between 20 and then 40, we find the data points that fall within that. Okay, between 40 and 60, we find the data points that exist between that. Between 60, 80, right, 80 and then 100. All right, so we find this makes it more simple for us. Okay, now if we consider this, right, let me clear this. All right, so let's take for instance the numbers or the data points that fall within 20 and then 40, right? So in that case, we can count them over here, maybe 1, let's say 2, 3, right, 4, 5 over here, 6, 7, 8. We are finding the data points that are between 20 and 30. Okay, 8, let's see, 9 here, 10 is here, and then 11 is here. Okay, so that's why you see we have 11 over there. So data points that appear between 20 and then 40, right, we have 11 of them. Okay, so we do the same thing for all of them. If we take for instance 80 and then 100, right, data points that fall between 80 and then 100, over here we can actually see let's see 80 and 100. So we have 1 here, right? Let me actually do it this way. We have 1, then we have 2. Okay, and then let's move on over here, right? We have 3, we have 4, we have 5. Okay, so we have 5 of them. So that's why you can see 5 over here. So in this case, this makes it more simple, I mean, to actually group or count these data points in a form of an interval like that, right, on an interval scale, instead of just listing them all the way to the last part. All right, so I hope now you actually have a sense when you have a huge data set how you're going to do it, instead of if you have a small data set, then I mean that's not a problem. You can just you can easily do it as we did over here, right? You can easily do it like this. But if you have a huge data set, then this is going to be, I mean, putting them on an interval scale like this is actually going to make sense. All right, so let's talk about one more concept over here, which is the cumulative frequency distribution. All right, so cumulative frequency distribution. Now, we've already learned what a frequency distribution is, right? We've already got to understand what a frequency distribution is, right? So what we're going to actually do over here is the new concept that we are adding here, which is cumulative, right? Cumulative frequency distribution. So we talk about frequency to be how often the items appear, and then when we tabulate them or put them on a graph, that becomes the distribution, right? That becomes the frequency distribution. So now let's see what this cumulative means, right? In terms of adding it to the cumulative frequency. I mean, adding it to the frequency distribution here. Now, this is our data point, or this is our table, right? So we have marks of students, so then we have how frequent those marks appear. So over here we have 5 students who scored 30, right? We have 5 students who scored 30. We have 7 students who scored 31. We have 10 students who scored 32. We have 6 students who scored 33. Okay. Now this is the same thing. This part of the table is the same thing, right? This part of the table is the same thing as this, just that this one is horizontal and here it becomes vertical. Okay, so you can see your 30 over here, you can see your 31 over here, right? You can see 32 over here, and then 33 over here. Okay, so it's just the same thing, it's just the same table. Now the frequency is also the same thing. You have 5 here, there's 7, you have 7 here, you have 10, you have your 10 here, you have a 6, you have a 6 over here. Okay, what we're going to see is this cumulative frequency. Okay, so what that means is that cumulatively, additionally, right? I mean, we just continuously add them. Okay, we just continuously add them cumulatively. Okay, so the first frequency is what? Is 5. Okay, let me do it this way. All right. Okay, the first frequency is 5. Okay, now the next one, the next cumulative frequency is the 5 plus the next frequency. Okay, that's what you can see over here. 5 plus 7, that will give you 12. So the next one, the next cumulative frequency is this 12 plus this, right? Plus the frequency over there, which is 12 plus 10. And the next one will be this 22 plus the 6, and that's what you can see over here. And then the final frequency, that's the total outcome that we get over here, which is 28. Okay, so that's basically cumulative frequency. That's, you keep on adding them cumulatively as you progress till you get your total frequency. Okay, so basically that's the concept of cumulative frequency. And I mean, this is some concept that you're going to encounter not quite often, but somehow you're going to encounter it as we progress. Okay, so let's move on, and then we talk about central tendency in the next video. Okay, so basically over here we've talked about cumulative frequency. We've gotten ourselves familiar with what frequency is and what frequency distribution is, and then we also saw some examples of it, right, in terms of an interval scale, and then we also saw how cumulative frequency is. So in the next video we're going to consider what central tendency is. Okay, so see you in the next video.